Thank you all very much for jumping into the life and times of a Blerd in America. This is a panel we had last year, and we wanted to have it again this year. It's a conversation that doesn't stop. You know, it was great last year, and we want to keep it moving. So thank you all. I got a ton of guests here today I want to thank for joining me. We got people watching I want to thank. And like I said, we had a great conversation last year, but we want to keep it going. So I have a ton of friends. Guys, we went deep. I got everybody and their brother who I could think of to come out and share their experiences. I want to hear about your experiences, and I also want to, if with time permitting, talk about what we can do to maybe make it better. So I'm going to just run through the gamut. I'll introduce you all, and again, ask about your experiences. So I'm going to start with Channing. Channing runs the Black Cosplayers of Dragon Con.
Uh-oh. Got so excited he froze.
It does look like Tony froze. So Channing, go ahead and I'll step in until Tony comes back. Go ahead and let us know a little bit more about why you're doing the Black Cosplayers of Dragon Con.
Okay, so I want to say probably around 2015, we started Black Geeks of Dragon Con. It wasn't started to be a protest. It was really a celebration. There were quite a few Black geeks already at Dragon Con, but they were all kind of separated in their own little pockets. And I started chasing them down for photos. And then my cousin and a couple of friends said, hey, why not just host a photo shoot? And so we started getting them together. Our first year, I think we had about 25 or 30. Last year, we had close to 300. So we've grown every year since we done it. But in my case, it was really just to kind of celebrate the diversity. I always tell people it's not a protest, it's a party, it's a family reunion. And it was just kind of a way to get people with some common interests together.
Thank you, Channing. I don't know what you guys saw on your end, but everyone froze up for me. I had some tech issues, and I jumped back in, and you were giving a great response. So thank you very much. I left the question was, how do you stay so ruggedly handsome? And that's when it froze. So I guess it didn't want that question.
Well, the trick is I just go outside and get a big pile of dirt and just rub it all in my face. That's how I get this look, that natural earthy look.
But I think the cosplay group is awesome. I remember saying last year during the panel, I was like, I've been coming to Dragon Con for 10 years, and there were a lot of people, cosplayers of color. I was like, I've never seen you guys. Where's everyone been? And it is such a big convention, but your group brings it all together. And so I think that's amazing. And I love what you say. It's a party. Let's have fun. You know, it's no one's there to cause any trouble, or it's not a us versus them. It's just a party of cosplay. So thank you so much. I'm going to move on to Alidria Hurt. She writes horror and fantasy and sci-fi. And again, I was looking through your website and I'm like, yo, I've never seen, usually when I see this stuff, it comes from Caucasian writers. And so tell us about your stories. Tell us about what you write and your experiences coming up through a scene that primarily currently doesn't have a lot of people of color.
I started writing the stories that I wanted to read because I come from a situation where I didn't see a lot of people that look like me. So, you know, I started out in comic books, and then I moved into fantasy novels, but you've seen the fantasy novels. They're all white people. So it's like, okay, where am I in this situation? And because I didn't see anybody who looked like me, what I turned around and I did was I started writing stories about me. I come from fan fiction and, online text-based role play. So I got to be Storm a lot. It was just a matter of that was where they put me. That was who I knew. So I got to be Storm a lot. And then I realized that after putting 1 million words in in fan fiction that I was like, I could write this and sell this. So in 2005, I wrote my first book. In 2014, I finally hit the button and published my first set of short stories. And then I found out that you couldn't put one of us on the cover and have it sell, which I found absolutely strange, because they wanted to shelve me in the African American section. And I was like, why is this a thing? Why does this even exist? It's like this, none of my subject matter looks like anything else in this section. Why would you shelve me over here?
And like I mentioned, when I was scrolling through your stuff, I was like, yo, these are, dragons and wizards and all that type of stuff that, again, I'm not used to seeing. And had I not known you wrote them, I'm not used to seeing that stuff coming from, African-American creators. And you're right. It's a challenge that I appreciate you sharing, because a lot of people just don't see that, they don't see that challenge. And so I hate that you have to deal with it, but it's there. And everyone on this panel knows it's there. But I'm glad you're saying it and sharing it basically with the world, because we're going worldwide this year, that people see that there's a challenge there. Funny enough, I'm going to move on to Dr. Al Kong, who's a Wall Street Journal bestselling fantasy author, and very similar vein. So can you share, again, challenges or what it's been like coming up in a fantasy world?
I mean, I absolutely agree with Alidria. I hope I'm saying that right.
You are.
You look at they don't really have the author rankings anymore on Amazon, but when you looked at them, they were generally 95 to 98%, white men, especially in the fantasy arena. Then there might be like a sprinkling of a woman here. It might be a sprinkling of someone that has some melanin in their skin to a varying extent. But for the most part, it's basically just a very homogenous kind of thing. That's something that honestly, that having grown up around enough, having gone to like both black and white schools growing up, I kind of assumed that if people hear there's a black book, they're just not going to read it. The same way, like people, I think a lot of men, if they hear there's a woman book, they're just not going to read it, as opposed to like just giving, the story a chance. So for me, when I was making my cover art, initially it was very like indie and just had like a bunch of smoke on it. But when I started taking like, my writing more seriously, I sort of tried to get that fantasy feel, but I very clearly, with my black main character, did not show his face at first, because I knew that if they see black face, they're out. Now, this is a conversation I've had at DragonCon before, where people are like, well, what's the point of writing a black main character if you're not going to put their black face on the cover? And my answer is like, well, you have to ask yourself, what is the goal that you're trying to do? And I was trying to be a successful author, and also sort of deconstruct some of these ideas that people have, that it's like, well, I only like white characters, or I only like this character, or whatever. Because on my 7th book, which broke all the rankings, it's just like a big black face right in the middle. And the number of times that I would get emails from fans that are like, there's just something I don't quite like. I can't put my finger on it, but there's something about this cover, whatever. And I'm like, yeah, I knew that you guys were going to be having this kind of thing. And I knew that there's a lot of inherent bias and inherent racism that people don't even really want to face. And it's funny that like, they're even like, and my book's been out for 5 years and my fandom's like pretty loyal, but even now, like about once a month, someone will be like, yeah, we should cast, I don't know, like the guy that just played James Bond for Richter, who's my main character. And everyone else is like, no, he's black. And then people are like, no, he's not. And it goes back and forth. And so I get on and I'm like, he's black. And then people are like, well, we'll just agree to disagree. And I'm like, I'm the author. But it's like, but that was my point, right? I knew that I was going to run into that, but it's to the point where people that like a character that is fictional cannot even allow for him to have melanin in his skin in a fictional world. And that's how deep it is. So I totally hear where you're coming from.
If I remember correctly, and you guys, this is probably a little more in y'all's realm, wasn't there issue with the gunslinger from the book movie? It was the same thing when they cast Idris, which
Dark Tower.
Dark Tower, thank you. Yeah, there was issue with that.
I mean, you're seeing it now with what is it? What's the big one that's coming out? Wheel of Time. The fact that they have like black people in there, like they're losing their minds about it. Dune, they're losing their minds about it. Like these are fictional realms, but it's just so deep that people just can't let it go. But again, I feel like if you're reading the newspaper, this is not a surprise either. So,
no,
let's not forget people. Go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead, Channing. What were you saying?
I was going to say, let's not forget people lost their minds at the thought of a black mermaid.
Yeah, right. Mermaids don't exist.
Thank you.
So don't tell me they need to have red hair. I mean, like, what the hell's wrong with you? But yeah, I know.
And it's, you know, what I love about this geek space, fantasy space, is it is fairly progressive for the most, you know, all things considered. But you're right. It doesn't take much. And it's laughable to me that when you talk about a mermaid, that people get not just, oh, that's interesting, literally up in arms over a mermaid. Or somebody that's willing to argue with, in your case, Dr. Kong, the person who made the character. Like, where did people get off? Think, you know, that to argue that. I'm going to come back to this point because it's something interesting, but I want to throw in Naru, Abajay. See, I've been practicing Naru. Now it's interesting, you know, you and I are buddies, man. We've talked before, but you're from Nigeria, and so it's a bit of a different perspective coming to the U.S. So what have you seen, and when did you come to the U.S. and start experiencing the geek nerd culture? So how's it been, I guess, unique or different for you?
Well, one of the things I always point out, and I think I mentioned this last year when we did this, was that coming from a place where you've never felt like a minority gives you a totally different perspective, and you usually start from a totally different headspace. And coming into the conversation around your geekdom is purely about that identity and whether it's accepted by the cultural norms and societal values that you grew up with in Nigeria or Africa as a whole. Coming to America, and yeah, I had to say that, was a whole different experience for me, because for me, America was so open. This was the first time I found a place where I could let loose on the things I loved. I could just channel my passion for these things into actual conversations and into interacting with people. And again, I came into these things totally oblivious to any kind of pushback about whether I should or should not like them. Like, I like it. It didn't occur to me that people might think I shouldn't have a place in these things, whether it was a novel or a comic book or a movie. It was all new to me. As a Nigerian, as an African, I wasn't represented on screen anyway. So I didn't even notice that Black Americans weren't represented on screen, for example, until I came here and started to have conversations. And then that really opened my eyes to a lot of things. And I've said this before, but it does feel sometimes, or it did feel for me, as if I was meeting new people, both Black and white and Asian and of all races, as long as they're American, because those cultures were alien to me regardless. They were all new to me regardless, even though I just said before, sound like I've been here forever. I only moved here in 2014. And since 2014, it's been a great journey of making new friends and just interacting and finding out so many new things. But to allude to something that Ali just said, I will say that it made me go back and check what's happening in Nigeria. Like, when you begin to open up, you go back and talk to your people. Hey, I'm going to these cons. I'm talking to these people. And I found out that there was actually a subculture of geeks and nerds and fans of all kinds of genres of stuff that I was totally oblivious to. And that's one of the reasons why I started Niger Nerds, because the plan was, okay, we need to uplift that and kind of spotlight that so that we can gain acceptance even back there, if that makes sense.
That makes perfect sense, Marie. Thank you. And like I said, you and I, for those that don't know, but we chat all the time. I always love hearing your stories, man, and hear about stuff from Nigeria. Like there's comics, there's work, there's film that I would never hear of, so I think that's awesome that you're sharing that stuff, man.
I'm sorry to bring this up again, but there is one thing I was going to allude to. I kind of forgot. Alidra mentioned writing about horror and fantasy, and Dr. Khan talked about dragon. I tell you the truth, I never knew that there's people I know who are creating content in Nigeria, set in Africa, that've got dragons and it's got all these things. So it's incredible, because we don't have those as cultural, in our cultural stories. Those aren't there, but these guys are going beyond and creating these stories and injecting these themes that I think is just fantastic stuff.
Look, I'll say it jokingly, but a lot of times in a lot of circles, dragons and magic, that's quote unquote white people stuff, and it's not. And that's, for those that do enjoy it, it puts you in an odd place where you're like, well, it's really not, So here comes a very odd segue, but I want to tell you guys a story of why Ted's on the panel. If you're sitting in the audience and you might be wondering, what is this guy doing here? Everyone's been polite. Nobody has asked that. But if it was me in the audience, I'd be thinking, what is this guy doing here? So I want to tell you guys, last year, a year ago to the day, when we were at Dragon Con in person, Ted and I have some mutual friends, and he was staying in our Airbnb. And we're just chatting. I think we're sitting around eating pizza or something. And I said, hey, man, what do you have going on? He said, oh, I'm a comic book creator. I'm making this comic. Here, check it out. And he hands me the book, and we're all thumbing through it. And it's all black characters, all characters of color. And I look around the room, and I was the only person of color there. And I was like, well, I got to ask. I can't just like, yo, what is this? And so I was like, with all respect, and I was like, Ted, I noticed it's all black characters. Can you tell me why your choice there? So Ted, that's what I want you to share and give me the answer you gave then. You have a book of black characters. We can see it on your wall. Why?
Yes.
Why? Where did that come from? How did you come up with that?
Oh, sure. And thanks for having me. So I was doing, I have some visual aids here. I was doing this book, Apama. Is that visible?
Yeah. Okay. You're good, man.
You can hear me. All right. So Apama was about this Hungarian ice cream truck driver in Cleveland who unlocks the spirit force of the most savage beast mankind has never known and becomes Cleveland's resident superhero. And I've been working on this book for 5-6 years off and on, and we keep introducing villains. And, I was, the first villain's a white guy.
Froze.
All right, we'll give Ted a second there. I think he froze. That's the joys of technology. And all right, Ted, you're back. Sorry, you froze up there for a minute. Right. Yep. You were saying the first villain in the book was a white guy.
Yeah, they don't want to talk about
this. Somebody's holding us back. All right, Ted.
Is it still going?
You're good.
All right. So anyway, I was in, all these characters were kind of white, and I just thought we got to a point like he's 10 and 11, and I thought I want to do something from musical years ago. And all the characters in it, I had the idea to make them into villains in the book. And the one I decided, I'm married to a black woman and we have a daughter, and I just doing cons all the time realized that there just wasn't enough representation, and I made her black, and her name is the Tap Dance Killer. And see if I can show the image of her. Is that visible?
Yep. Mm-hmm. And it's the poster you have on your wall. It's perfect.
Oh, duh. All right. So anyway, what I found was crazy because people were sharing images of this character by the thousands, which never happened for Apama. And, I just thought,
all right, Ted, you're breaking up again. But as he was alluding to, and I'll let him jump in when he gets in, the story he told me was, I have a daughter who's young and mixed, and there's nothing out there. And it doesn't take much. Ted, you're back. I was just sharing, you were saying there wasn't anything out there for your daughter. There was nothing being represented. Yeah.
So decided to do that. And the response, which is quite different than what everyone else on the panel has said. I found that people of any ethnicity, any age, really respond to her much more than our Apama character.
All right, Ted, I'm going to go ahead.
You know what I could do? If you want to come back to me, I could try to check something downstairs.
Yeah, I'll do that, Ted. I'll do that. But I want to share his story that he told me. Like I said, he said, I have a daughter, and I quickly noticed there's nothing out there. And I was like, dude, we got to talk about this. And he reached out to me through the year. He was like, I'm ready. Let's go. I was like, all right, man, it's January. Relax. But he said, as soon as you set your panel back up, let me know. I want to come talk. Because it took him, I feel like, immediately having a child of noticing there's not much out there. I actually talked to Brian Michael Bendis recently, who created Miles Morales. And I didn't know until a couple weeks ago, he is a white guy. And he said same thing. He has children, that granted they're adopted, but they're still his children, that he said once he opened his eyes, he noticed there was nothing out there. Yeah. So sometimes it just takes looking a little bit. And Ted, it looks like you're doing better, but I want to say there's so little out there that once you have a little bit of that, start sharing some characters of color, people are excited, because they don't see it often enough.
Well, and the response, am I on now?
Yes.
Can you hear me? Okay. The response really has been tremendous. And I don't know if I cut out before I said this, but she sells for me much better than our Apama character. And even to white folks, it's just so bizarre that, I guess that I'm hearing the experiences of Alidria and, how not putting a black character out front or the struggles you have doing that by putting them out front and people sort of maybe pigeonhole you. I'm finding as a white creator, almost the opposite. Like I have this banner behind me when I do the shows and people just come up to me and ask me about her. It's like, I don't have to work even as hard to sell this book. And I can't really understand what the difference is here. And it makes me so grateful for the support I've had, but it makes me heartbroken to hear that it's not being shared with some of you.
It's Ted, thank you for sharing that. I do think there has been more interest, but it is, it's interesting and curious. And I always come back to the anger over a mermaid. It's hard sometimes to figure people out and, what works, what doesn't work, or where people's heads and hearts are at. Violet, I'm going to move on to thank you so much, Ted. Violet Meyer, who is also a writer and an artist. Violet, thank you for your patience. We have so many people here. We got a big party today. So thank you for your patience. And again, same question. I want to hear, as you're coming up in your writing and writing things, how the community has reacted to you and maybe challenges you faced.
Believe it or not, I am very, very deeply engrossed within the independent community. So among independent African-American writers and artists and blerds, we really support each other a lot. And it is so much material out. It may not be mainstream, but it's so many of us with so many beautiful ideas and stories and comic books and artworks. So when I hear things that it's just not there, it's not the truth. It is so many. Like, for example, if you go on the Facebook page, Black Science Fiction and Fantasy Society, it's over 100,000 people in there alone. So we're there if people just don't want to acknowledge it. And I think and you just have to find, honestly, I write things that I want to read and I love to read. When I first became a writer, I wanted so deeply to make people read what I wanted. Now I respect and have the most admiration for those who love what I do. And I write for those people.
It's hard when you're first coming up. I want to say, I think Alidria said you're trying to sell, you want to be big, you want to be famous. And it's, you want to try to please all the people all the time. Yes. And it sounds, you can't, we all know you can't do that. And it sounds like you've gotten to that place where you're you and you share what you want to share.
Exactly.
There was a question, it may have been in Channing's Facebook group. Somebody said, bless you. Somebody said, where can you go to find new creators? So tell me a little more about this page or other pages or other groups. If somebody watching this says, I want more of this, you can't go to, I feel like you can't go to the mainstream, you know? So where can you go?
Well, because African American fantasy and paranormal writing, like I do, is a niche thing. So you have to go to niche places. Like I said, Facebook online is the greatest place. You have the Black Science Fiction Society, and you can find all of them on Facebook, actually. And both of those groups have more than 100,000 members. It is a lot of people, and they're worldwide. So they're there. You just have to take time to look for it. I think the problem is that people are begging for the mainstream to say, love me, instead of writing what you are, who you are, and being true to who you are, period. And people who love what you do will find you.
And just to piggyback off that, for all the bad things you hear about Facebook and Twitter, it has become a place where smaller communities of color can get together to find these niche things. Same thing with Reddit. There's a lot of dirt and a lot of crap on there, but we've kind of been able to carve out our own spaces there. And it really is a good way to kind of promote or to find those little individual things that might be considered in some circles white people stuff, but then you find out, oh wait, here's this community of thousands of Black people and they're into it too. All right, I'm good to go.
Yeah. Well, we've also got State of Black Science Fiction. Mm-hmm. And Colors and Darkness is one that I do a lot, which is Maya Laris. And they're all places where you can go to find more us.
And that's what I love I love conventions in general. It's just, to me, it's a happy place. But that's what I love, just walking around and talking to the creators. And I'm not going to say I necessarily look for Black creators, but they do stand out in a convention, when there's not a lot of them. So it's always interesting to see and hear from them. Daviar, I did not forget about you. Daviar Snipes, stage, film, voice actor. So a little bit different. We've had a lot of writers. So can you share your perspective coming up in acting? Is it you always feel like, oh, well, there's a lot of Black people on stage, but what's that scene like? How was that like coming up?
Yeah, look, it's different, but it's all the same because it's all intersectional. Because in the world of arts and coming up in the world of theater as a Black actor is literally no different than trying to break into the scene of being an author as a Black writer, because you're inherently going to be marginalized. And I think Violet hit it on the head, where it's not that we're not there. Like, Black folks did not just show up in the theater. We did not just show up into liking comics and geek stuff. We've been around forever, but to the point of waiting, the mainstream doesn't acknowledge the presence, because we have to understand that the mainstream is organized to cater to whiteness. So it's going to highlight, as Dr. Kent Kong was saying, it's going to highlight the white face that we're used to seeing. So it's perfectly understandable for me to understand, like, when there is a Miles Morales or a Black Ariel, that people lose their minds, because from birth they've been conditioned that, well, it's only supposed to be white, right? Because that's all that they've ever been exposed to. Because to Violet's point, you have to go find artists of color, and it's not that it's difficult. You just have to go take the initiative to go look. And once you go look, not to be turned off because the first thing you read or the first thing you watched wasn't good. So, well, and because, that normally is what happens, where people will see one thing and say, well, they're not as good because that one thing I once saw, when there's a ton of white stuff that sucks. So it's taking the initiative to move forward and then sticking with that. And that's how you're going to find other voices. That's how you're going to find other experiences, because we're there, we're here, but we've been doing great work for a long time.
Yeah, I saw Catwoman once, and I just decided that all Black superhero movies suck.
But that is a truth. That is a truth. Like,
no, you're
something
right.
Like that will happen, and that will be the barometer to why we can never have another Black female lead in a superhero movie, because Catwoman. Meanwhile, we got Jonah Hex and Josh Brolin went on to be Thanos.
God.
So, hey.
You're absolutely right. And it's sad to me. It's unfortunate. But again, you're absolutely right. And that's all it takes is that one, like, oh, well, that was bad. And that marks everything. In fact, one of the questions I posed the panel in a couple of groups, one of the groups, they said, what's next now that we've seen, as they put it, now that we know African Americans will go to comic book movies with Black Panther, what's next? What can we do with that? And I understand their question, but much like a couple of you said, everyone's been there. It's not, it's not the Blerds. It's not the first.
It's not our first comic book movie. It's like the midnight showing for like Iron Man was like comic book movie. I went to that. I went to the midnight showing for Avengers. I mean, it's like I might have been the only dark colored face in the entire theater, but I was there.
And that's the thing I was going to share. Unfortunately, I remember I've been to all of them, and I distinctly remember, and I feel like I'm not the only one that's done this. We kind of look around like, all right, where are the other Black people at? Are there, and they stand out because they're so few and far between.
I'm from Atlanta. So when Lord of the Rings came out, I saw Black faces lining up down the street. So for me, I mean, maybe Atlanta truly is a bubble, but for me to be a Blerd is not odd. I graduated from historically Black colleges with advanced degrees, and for me, this is what I am.
No, Violet, it's not just a bubble, because a lot of times when that statement is made that we went somewhere and we didn't see a lot of us, it's because you might have not have seen a lot of Black folks at that theater. Yeah. But if you go to AMC North DeKalb, then you'll see sold out houses of Black folks seeing it. So it's also about where do you put yourself to make your judgments. And a lot of times it's very simple. Our judgments are all based on our own perceptions of how of the world we've cultivated. And if we simply just step outside of that, then we'll realize, oh my God, look at all these Black folks over here. I never knew. And so it's not, we're there. You're just not at the place where we are.
Yeah.
Dave, it's funny you say that, because at the panel last year, when I said to the group, I said, I've been coming to DragonCon for 10 years. I haven't seen any of y'all. And somebody said, well, where are you? I was like, right. Well, where are you? Where are we? We gotta work this out. We gotta hook up,
Yeah, we've been on the steps of the Sheridan for about 3-4 years now, man.
I'm glad you said that, Jenny, because I will say this. I heard about stuff you guys are doing. I found out about it through Facebook. Like I saw some of the pictures and people started sharing that stuff. And I was like, wait a second. This was happening there? When? How did I miss this? I'm up in front attending one place and you guys are out the back doing, oh my God. But I will say that the thing I like about groups like Facebook is that there's so much, like I jump into so many of these groups. Like you guys are talking groups, Violet and Alidria was saying some groups. I'm typing them up like, yep, okay, sign up. Because it just adds more flair and spice to my overall experience of nerddom. And it's not all about the colored experience too. It's just about, the interest, the groupings by the fantasy, the groupings by sci-fi, the groupings by certain fandoms specific to specific works as well. I've jumped into discords that are after a specific book, just because I want to kind of engage with people on that topic. So it's been really good. And another thing I think I found I needed to do was ignore the mainstream and create my own stream. Because when I looked around and realized, okay, I'm running into these groups and I worked in sales. I still do. I've always been a guy who, when I like it, I yell about it. I tell people about it. I tell everybody about it. Like I've told people about stuff. I've been telling people about the Tony P. Oddcast. I've been talking about for 2 years. Seriously, that's who I am. So that part of me had to come out when I ran into Creative Works, and I would buy first editions and keep them. I have a box full of first editions of different people's stuff because I want to not just support in cash, but I also want to talk about what they do and show it. So Niger Nerds, when we started it, it was all about how can I shine the light and create a whole new stream where we can talk about the stuff that, because I would go to a movie and I'd sit there and then somewhere down I'd run into a name and I'm like, that's a Nigerian name. Interesting. This person wasn't in the press. I didn't hear nothing about this person. There's no coverage. I mean, they talked to everybody but you. And then I didn't know you were there. And then sometimes I'd be looking through the people behind the scenes and I'd run into one or two names. So it became about, let me go find those stories. Let me go find those people and put them front and center of something, you know, and then let others be encouraged to say, hey, this guy's doing this. Because if you know anything about Africans, if there's money in it, I'm going to do it. If there's no money in it, I will not do it. So that's what's happening in our part of the world. Parents don't support people. So people like me want to create this environment where people can know that you can make money doing this. So yeah, that's what we do, man. And looking forward to doing more of that. By the way, got to say this real quick. Dr. Kong, I don't know if you've ever planned to come to Africa, be in Nigeria, but you have the perfect last name for us to come and give you a chieftaincy title and you can become a king. You know what I'm saying?
I appreciate that.
Naru, you and I have been doing panels. You've never offered me Nigerian royalty.
I'm sorry. King Henderson, Chief Henderson, King Kong. Come on. I mean,
You're
really?
right. You're right.
Oddly enough, I got black cosplayers. I got the black cosplayers group because someone literally walked up to me and handed me a business card. Walked up to me and handed me a business card and said, you look like you should be joining us. And I was like, who's what a hana what? And I looked at the card and was like, oh, this tells me what time I'm supposed to be there. Okay. I will go do this thing because I have no idea what is going on, but I want to know because now I have been handed a business card by some mysterious stranger. It might possibly lead to some great adventure in my life, and it did.
Yes. You know, I was worried I was going to end up on a list. There were about 5 of us when we first started, and we all had cards. We were just going around. Black Geeks photo shoot, Black Geeks photo shoot, Black Geeks. We would chase that. Oh, there's some black people across the street. We're like ducking across Peachtree. To make sure as many people knew. And yeah, I was worried I was going to end up on some kind of watch list at some point in time. But
you know, I've mentioned I love Dragon Con to death, but I will say when you go back and look at pictures and look at recaps, marginalized groups get left out. I have a friend, she just formed a plus size costumers group, and people are coming in droves because they're like, yeah, there's not a lot of pictures, you know, and any marginalized group, unfortunately, you got to do the work that Channing, I think, is awesome that you guys are doing, you know, and so really,
Tony,
yes, please, Dave. Yes,
if I can add into that, to tag on to that, that is when that's the work that the allies need to do. Like it shouldn't just be us passing out the cards and spreading around the words and spreading around the information. If you consider yourself to be an ally, then you need to take initiative on those things too, and be like, hey, you know, people of different sizes and body types are not being represented enough in these photos. If you have podcasts, you need to make sure that people of color are also on your podcast. So you're not just contributing to the whiteness of the space of geekdom by only having conversations about topics with Black folks, and also don't just bring us on to talk about Black Panther. You know, bring us on to talk about a lot of different things as well. And that's the thing that we can do so that we all are working towards creating a more inclusive community.
And you know what? I realized that a lot of people want to see it. Last year, I'm a member of the State of Black Science Fiction. And we did the Decatur Book Festival here in Atlanta, which is one of the biggest book festivals in the Southeast United States. And it was just 5 of us. And we did the Decatur Book Festival together, and we sold out because they were like, oh my God, Black people in fantasy. And all of our book colors had Black people on them. And you'd be surprised, white people bought us out so quickly, because they was like, I've never even seen that before. So people want to see it. People want to have it. It was a great thing. NPR came and interviewed us, and it was a great experience. People want it.
And so that's a perfect segue. I would think you set me up perfect. So we have about 10 minutes left, and we're not going to end this panel until I hear from each and every one of you where we can find your work, your stuff, your socials, whatever you have going on. So I'm going to start with Channing Sherman. You talked about your group. Where can everyone find it? What can they do? Is everyone welcome? Give us a little spiel on it.
Yeah, everyone is welcome. We've had white photographers, Asian photographers. I mean, anybody who wants to be an ally, like we talked about, and celebrate that cosplay is more than welcome to come out and be an ally. If you go on Facebook, look for us at Black Geeks of Dragon Con. You can find us on Instagram and Twitter at DC Black Geeks, as in Dragon Con Black Geeks. We're mainly focused around Dragon Con, but we are trying to do more stuff year round. Fingers crossed. And you can find me personally at Channing Sherman on Instagram and Twitter.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Alidria, where can we find your work, your stuff, your content?
Lucky for me, I have one of those first names that literally makes me the first 5 pages of Google. If you can spell my first name, you will find me.
Sounds like a deal. Alledria. Perfect. Just Google it and we will find you. Dr. Alaron Kong, where can we find your work, your fantasy books?
What's that? I'm on litrpg.com, litrpg.com. That's the style of book that I write. Also, you can type my name. I'm also the first 5 pages on Google. I'm on Amazon. I'm on Audible. I've got 8 books that are out there so far, and I have 2 more coming out this year. So I appreciate you checking me out.
And next year, when we're all back in person, man, I'm going to come say hello to everyone. I'm assuming they'll all have booths and stuff and things to sell. I can't wait to see everyone in person. Ted, where can we find your books? Ted is frozen again. Ted, you're killing me, Ted. We'll come back to Ted.
The Illuminati.
Violet Meyer, where can we find your work?
You can find me at violetmeyer.com. That's VIOLETTEMEIER. I'm also under Instagram at Violet Meyer, Facebook Violet Meyer, Twitter Violet Meyer. You can find me everywhere, Violet Meyer.
Ted, you're back. Where can we find your books?
HeroTomorrow.com. Did that make
Got it? HeroTomorrow.com. Let's get it in.
Sorry about all that.
Oh, you're fine, Ted. Thank you so much. And again, last but not least, Davey R. Snipes, where can we find your stuff?
Yeah, so I'm at the Alliance Theater. You can find me at the Alliance Theater podcast. That's here in Midtown Atlanta, and also on NPR's Buried Truths. I'm an actor on those series as well.
Awesome. And Dave, we have a follow-up question for you, which is perfect because I got a couple more minutes to kill. Someone from the chat popped in, and I think this is a great question, and I don't want to miss. If content creators, podcasters want to include more people of color, hey, I want to be an ally, I want to get people involved, what can they do to get more Black guests but avoid tokenism? You don't want to look like that person. You don't want to do that. And so I'll start with you, David, but anyone can jump in here.
Number one, don't worry about tokenism. If we're on there to talk about a variety of issues, that's not tokenism. What becomes tokenism is when you have us on there only to talk about Watchmen, Black Panther, the latest Spike Lee movie. That's when we become tokenized. But if we're on there to talk about a variety of subjects, we're just a part of the group now. And that's what we're trying to do.
No, I have the same thing. I was working with a guy who runs this amazing program where he creates custom rigs for disabled children so that they can interface with the world more. And he just does this tirelessly. But when Black Lives Matter came around, he's like, I want to talk about this, but I don't want to feel like I'm ignoring the kids. But if I'm helping the kids, am I not caring enough about Black people? And blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, yo, let that off your shoulder. Like, do something and you're winning. And I just feel like, I agree. Like tokenism, the idea, there's always going to be people that are going to be in your face, but like, I don't listen to those people either. So just do something good for you.
Yeah, there's plenty of people in our group. We've got CDC people, we've got lawyers, we've got doctors, we've got teachers. You don't need a Black person just to talk about something Black. It's newsflash, I know, but it's true. You can bring us on for any kind of topics.
Anything.
Yeah.
Go ahead, just want to say, I didn't get to say where they can find me. But I will say that I don't happen to have one of those first names that you can find. You do a first name search with me, you'll probably run into some sort of sexy massage or some stuff like that. So let's sidestep that. You can find me at the NigerNerds.com. That's our website. You can also find us on social media at the Niger Nerds. And coincidentally, same time tomorrow, I'll be hosting a panel with a bunch of the guys I was talking about, some authors and filmmakers from different parts of the world, but Africans. And we're going to be talking about African history and Afrofuturism. So y'all are invited to watch, and I think you might enjoy the topics, and it should be fun.
Naru, I'm so sorry. I went down my list. I don't know if I skipped you or if I'm just mad at you.
I'm not on the list. I know.
I think it was that whole lack of royalty thing. I was a little bitter about it.
Right. I'm gonna get you back.
You hit the point exactly. The last thing I have for wrap up. First off, again, I can't thank you guys enough because I put out emails, I put out calls. We have a ton of people. We have way more people on this panel than I would normally like, but I wasn't going to tell anybody no. And I appreciate you all coming out and saying your piece and telling your stories and sharing that with everybody. So thank you for that. Again, I know with it being virtual this year, there's a lot of work. It's been complicated, but you guys fought through it. And I really appreciate you joining us to talk about your stories, talk about your work. And yeah, this isn't the last panel. There's a ton of stuff. As Naru mentioned, tomorrow he has an awesome panel talking about African comics. Saturday that's at 3.
Yeah,
Saturday at 3 p.m. Saturday at 7. There's another panel on representation, which is it's kind of all the same battle. It's all the same struggle. So tune in for that, and just a ton of other content. I think we're doing from 2 p.m. to 11 p.m. every day here on this channel. So don't go anywhere. Again, thank you all for telling your story, and I cannot wait. I'm finding you all next year and shaking hands, giving hugs, whatever you're down with. We'll see everyone next year. So rest in power to Chadwick. It's a rough year. I wish we were there in person to do this. And thank you all again. We're going to do the Zoom wave. This is the Zoom wave we do at work. Thank you all so much.